Hello, everyone. Welcome back to my YouTube channel. Today is July 27th, 2023, and the world is still spinning out of control. And we have with us today the beautiful Desiree Holmes Scherini, who's back from travel. And we have a really good conversation we wanted to have today based on some conversations she had. And what we want to talk about is respecting nature. So how are you, Desiree?
I'm good, settling in a travel recovery mode, but this is day 2 of being back. So I've got my iced coffee and I'm,
Ready to go?
yeah, thank you.
So it was interesting what we were talking about when we were looking at things to discuss today, what topic we wanted to address. And we were talking about the males imposing themselves on women is what we kind of started talking about. And then we started looking at it from both perspectives. And you had come up about it, respecting nature, right? And so I thought this was a really great way to discuss this topic. And what we had started, just to bring everybody up to speed, what we had started talking about was men imposing themselves in women's sports, and there's quite a movement that women are feeling invaded and feeling victimized by this.
Yeah.
And where this conversation started going was we started looking at, do you remember when girls made it into boys' sports? Nobody complained then, even though it was difficult to get into. And do men belong in women's locker rooms? No. Do women belong in men's locker rooms? My personal opinion is no, because you don't know whose humility you're invading, or somebody's sense of humility, or not being shy, but just wanting their own respect and not wanting to share their nakedness with another person, right? So this is where we kind of started going with this. And it's interesting because there's a lot of people out here that are saying that these men don't belong in these women's sports, that women are not chest feeders. And I totally agree with that. But what I'm finding is, what question I was going to ask is, are these men filling a void? Because I don't see too many women who are actually acting as women either. And it was interesting because we were talking about this. I was at the grocery store yesterday, and I don't know how it works with fire departments in everybody's cities, what have you. But I know around here, when they're on shifts, they assign certain people to cook the meal. So quite often you'll see the local fire departments in the grocery store in uniform, getting their supplies for whatever meal they're making that day. And as I was walking out of the grocery store, I see a fireman walking towards me. It's a woman. And I'm like, okay. So as I'm going to my car, I turn and I look, and the 4 people on that truck, 3 were females and 1 was a male. And Desiree, you made a great point on this. Do you want to share your perspective on that when I told you 3 were female?
Um, well, if that's representative of the whole crew, if the house is on fire, I need to get carried out, I'm like, can I have the man, please? Can I, the big guy with muscles,
Exactly.
yeah.
And it's interesting because I was telling the story to a friend this morning, and she goes, I don't agree with a lot of these things. She goes, we're the taxpayer. Why don't we get to choose who we want in these roles that we're paying for their salaries? Why do they get to tell us who gets to do it when we should be the ones telling them? And she made a great point. She goes, the same for law enforcement. And I said, you're right. We don't know what behavioral interview questions these people are asked. We don't know what personalities they have. We don't know if they think that they're entitled, so that's why they got the job, because they're filling a quota. We're not aware of a lot of these things. And so many people are starting to take stock of how our communities are loaded and how they operate. But these are great questions to be asking, starting to ask ourselves, why do we allow so many people to be in a gender reversed role?
Mm-hmm.
So,
Yeah.
and I'm not talking a lawyer where smarts are smarts, where you can be unisex. I'm not talking those kind of positions, but I'm talking, even the sanitation engineers. Sometimes there's females running it, and I'll tell you, if somebody's going to throw my garbage bin or my recycle bin hard, it's her. I watch them.
Yeah,
I'm like,
really?
what have you got to prove?
Huh.
I'm looking at a
Funny.
lot of the city jobs now where they're cutting the grass with the weed whackers, right? They're females. Like, this is what you've
Yeah.
aspired to be, a city worker. I'm not putting down city workers, although they have a lot to be accountable for as well, right? So
Yeah.
that was my question. Why is it okay for some women to assume masculine roles over feminine roles, but not the other way around? So do I think these men are capable of nursing a baby, suckling a baby? Of course not. Do I think they have as much of a playful personality on the whole, like a certain amount of immaturity or ability to play with a range of ages? Not necessarily. That's why the women sometimes are more immature, because we are meant to play with the children when they're young. and we are meant to, because you're going to be home with them. It doesn't mean we're immature, or that when your partner comes through the door, you're going to be, acting as if you're grade 5. You're going to have an intelligent conversation. But again, it's that range that we can go both ways. So I love this example. Another example we came up with was the police officer. When you see female police officers, so going back to respecting nature, this is all about nature, understanding the balance between the masculine and feminine. If you have a female police officer, and we've seen some of them, they are scary. Like, they look absolutely menacing. And you think to yourself, sometimes you're more afraid of them than you are of the males. And we shouldn't be afraid of any of our police, but it's the way it is. But if these women go home with that same tough butch attitude, they're going to polarize that male at home. So he's going to have to revert and be the role of the feminine, because you have a masculine and feminine. Even in gay relationships, one is more masculine, one is more feminine, and they usually balance themselves out on the scale. Right. So you see sports players sometimes, they can be very masculine. Let's say a football player. I don't do sports, but you see the wife often is the trophy wife, because he needs the polar opposite of that intense masculine energy to balance. And this is one of the laws of nature, laws of gender, one of the laws of nature that we have started disrespecting. So what happens if that female police officer goes home and she wants to be in charge? He's either got to bend over and be the wife, be the female, and take rules, direction from her, or he's gone. So we are not understanding that some things are natural. And what did you say about species? Like, we have two, male and female. Could you go ahead and share your thoughts on that?
And in the whole concept, when I kind of zoom out and I think, okay, it's an uncomfortable thing about, like, well, what's going on here with like gender role reversal and that sort of thing. That when I zoom out, I'm like, okay, there's nature, that there's got to be a balance, and a female and male, they balance each other in a unity. And even just like within us, we have our traits that we can balance. If you're too feminine all the time, I don't care if you're a woman, it's like, ooh, get back. Right. Totally. Or if you're a guy and you're always like this without, so that you have to find even within yourself that balance of your parts, integrate as couples. And then you asked me a question, and I said, and I just totally went off the other end with it.
I made a question about all the different species and some of the attributes of a particular species.
And so the balance was that, we are made to be together. And there are animals out there, there are creatures out there that are impregnating and lay their own eggs. And what I said is, and you said that's right. And I said, then, we're not one of them.
Yes. So, and that's the point to make.
Yeah. So nature, with our parts in general, except for very, very few, say, that have, I think it's Klinefelter syndrome, except for very, very few that have gotten, both parts or something unusual. And even they usually have a hormonal direction for their gender identity.
Those are so few. If we focus on them, it's like the tail wagging the dog.
That's what I'm saying.
It's less than 5%.
It's way
less than 1%.
So nature has provided us at birth, at conception, as those little cells start dividing, female or male as human beings, and most, mammalian animals, as I understand it. So hence we came up with the concept of, like, we are disrespecting nature. Okay. For those of faith, we're disrespecting, God's creation. And even if you have, no belief in a higher, being, it's nature. You live on earth. There are trees and plants, and everything has its natural way of being and propagating, and it's design. Yes. It's design.
Isn't it marijuana plants that have male and female?
I don't know.
I believe that, and I believe the Palo Santo trees down in South America, which is the equivalent of frankincense, I believe there's a male tree and there's female trees around it so that it can pollinate and perpetuate the species, right? Because the way we're doing it now, humans are a dying species. And this role reversal is causing a lot of that. Sorry, go ahead.
and this might be a little controversial. I was watching an interview. Might be a little, might be. Not with, I don't know, not with someone who understands, what's going on to a degree. There's been a clip that's been circulating of a pride parade that was in New York, where, and I can't remember the exact chant, but it was like,
Oh yeah, we know which one. They're coming for your kids.
Are coming for your kids.
Yeah.
And the question in the interview after they showed that, we're here, we're queer, we're coming for your kids.
Yeah.
And it's like somebody, and so they showed that clip, and in the interview they said, well, why, what's that about? And the person pointed out that if there's, the people that have a union of the same gender cannot reproduce.
We're
And
made
so
by a man and a woman.
for that culture, for their culture to survive, they need the children from heterosexual.
Totally. And that's what a lot of that is about, right?
And it's just, as I've
But
said before,
it's not gonna work, because they're gonna do the exact same thing to that generation that they did to themselves or somebody did to them, and they're still gonna be, so that's gonna be a generational thing, taking biological children. And this is just not acceptable behavior, any way, shape, or form, right? But even when they tell people they're doing it, it's like some people don't want to believe it. But do you know what a question that I have, when the vid hit, the lockdowns came, I was in the liquor store the one day, and I said, how are people taking this? And the teller told me, you would not believe how many women are coming in and buying wine by the case, saying, if I got to be home with my kids all day, I'm going to need this. So women don't want to be women, but we have men who are coming in pretending to be women, which we know they're not women. So are the men filling a void because women don't want to be women? Women don't want the role of staying home. And I'm not saying don't have a career. I'm not implying anything along that line, but it's almost like women have started self-loathing what it means to be feminine. And being feminine is the nurturing. It is the cuddling. It's the laughing. It's the playing. It is a lot of those things fall into the feminine more naturally than it does to the masculine. Again, this is about uniting the two, not separating them. But we have to recognize there are differences in us. So there's a saying about now, they're trying to take the gender, the sex out of this, but they're saying that women are chest feeders. It's not the men saying that. It's the academics saying that. It's the scientists saying that. Why do we turn on each other all the time and blame each other, instead of looking and saying, what asshat came up with this concept? Because it is the academics, it is the scientists, it is the mental health community, maybe the higher ups that are pushing these agendas, right? So many, I know a few people who are teachers, and okay, so I'm going to jump around here a bit. Whatever's happening in your Congress, there's so many investigations right now. I can't even bother to keep up with them, but there's so many of them, right? But what they're talking about was the three-letter agencies being told to stand down. Stand down, stand down. So this is how my mind works, right? So I'm thinking about that this week, and I'm thinking these people are professional liars and evading accountability. So a few of the teachers I know of were told to put certain books of explicit acts in their classroom. And they said, if you oppose to this, we suggest you stand down. So standing down seems to be going right across, right up and down the food chain of whatever these occupations are.
Yeah.
So when we start looking at stand down, or you're going to get punished, stand down, or you're going to lose your job, stand down, or things aren't going to go well for you. We do not have a society that functions in a social capacity in any way, shape, or form, because it's all the places that deal with the human condition of consciousness that are being given these orders to stand down. So I just heard an interview, I've not confirmed this yet, that says that Canada passed a law, and I think they called it, they can have a chubby be semi-erect as long as they're not waxing the wand. I don't know how else to word that. Then it's legal in front of children. So I've asked this person to verify and show us this. Is it Canada or is it provincial? Like a province in Canada? But so these police are standing down. We watch them at the DQ story hour protecting the story hour. They've been told to stand down. Why are we paying all these people if they don't have the moral fiber to do the right thing? So that's just one aspect of this. So they are defying nature by using brute force. They are stronger than the female counterparts, except for the ones built like a dishwasher, right? So the real tough ones. But so on average, they're stronger than the average person, but they're using their brute force to keep us in a system that is going to be harmful to little ones. So going back to this, the gender thing. So what I came up came up with, do women want to be women? Do women even want the role of being women? So you can't complain the men are coming in and taking the role when you don't want it. And my friend and I, again, this morning, just wonderful conversation, lots of laughter. We both love being women. We can say what we like about being women, but how many women can actually name 3 things they love about being women? So I think the shortcoming, part of it is women have been trained through the feminist movement to loathe themselves. But I find so many women can't even tell me 3 amazing things about themselves or what they love about being women. So we're complaining about these men coming forward, but if all we do is complain about them on a sports team, that's really our biggest complaint. We should be complaining that they're following your kid in the bathroom. And what's happening, they're really pushing this what you say about them, how you view them, what pronouns and that you're using. But basically how they've got it now, if one of these guys follows your child into the bathroom and you say the wrong thing, now you're the criminal.
Yeah.
So totally crazy, right? So what do women want? And so this is a question these are questions that I have. What do women appreciate about being women? What do you love about being a woman? Or are you just a victim? Because this is what's coming up. And when we kind of started, we're talking about this, about men imposing themselves. Well, we don't mind it when we do it. So where's there going to be, where's the stop going to be that we stop doing certain things, right? I don't see too many women who want to drive the farm equipment. Like, in the summertime, you're seeing hay come down, you're seeing the grains come down, but mostly that's traditionally a male role, right? So, but I don't think women want to do that. I don't think women want to empty out the big vats of, like whatever the big sewage tank for once you clean out the pig pens.
Not sure the men want to either, but
totally, but they do it.
So well.
We're pick and choose what when we want to be what, right? So what do women want? Are the males filling a role? So I want to talk about pornography. It was funny because I was with a group of women last week and we're talking about pornography. And one of them said she was watching a documentary, and a few of the men said, "We are so afraid of women. We can't deal with you right now. That we would rather service ourselves than put up with this insanity." And I thought that could explain, just with Sound of Freedom out now, why there's such a push for this. What are we doing wrong that we're not getting love right? We're not getting relationships right, that so many people are looking to step out either through that medium or actually physically hooking up with the people who are being pushed into that trade. So it's just a really interesting dynamic when we look at this, but it's almost like women hate being women. And when I was writing my book, I was talking to different men, and some of the men I was talking to had either Asian wives or South American wives. And I asked, what was that? At first I thought it was a racial thing, right? But I asked them what it was about, and they said, North American women are just so hard. They're cold. And I'm like, really? And I'm not saying that for everybody, but so basically there's just a softness that they want in the women. That's why women have curvy parts. There's a softness to us that we're supposed to have. We're not meant to have a 6-pack abs. Yet that's what they're promoting when you're looking at a lot of the sportswear, or you're looking at the gym memberships. You're looking at women who are just buff like a man. I'm not suggesting we don't look after ourselves. I'm not saying anything along that line. But I think we really need to start looking at why women feel that we're always the victim. And that's kind of where this was headed. That, oh no, look at these men, they're taken from us again. Why don't we look at what we do? It was funny. I know I've told this story a few times. I was out for a walk one day, and I was thinking to myself, it'd be interesting to coach a teenager. And so a couple of days later, I'm out for this walk, and there's a girl sitting in the middle of the forest on a log reading the Book of Tao. And I'm like, well, that's an interesting choice. She started talking, and she said, there's this boy that likes her at school. And I'm like, okay. And she said, she goes, I think he's afraid of me. And I go, why? And she goes, because when he texts me, and if I text him back, he doesn't text for a while.
Well, that's just a man. He is being a man. Yeah.
So I'm like, well, I don't know if that means anything. And she goes, I think he's afraid of me. I go, why would he be afraid of you? She goes, that's just what I think. And then she goes, he asked me what my kill ratio is. And I go, what's that? And she goes, how many guys I've had sex with? This kid's 14.
A kill ratio?
So where's the mother in this scenario to teach her daughter That's not what this is about, that you don't do it. It's not a contact sport. You find love in your heart. So that what I'm thinking is missing is that loving connection. So everybody's stuck in the 3D physical dimension. This guy's on my sports team. This guy's coming into girls sports. This guy's, I don't agree with the bathroom and the locker room at all. I think the people who work in these institutions should be charged if somebody gets hurt in that scenario. Another story.
Yeah.
But we're missing something totally. We're not respecting nature as human beings, is
Yeah.
what I'm finding, right? And what I'm finding, we've talked about this before, it's the females who are the predators in the education system. You're seeing
Yeah.
all kinds of videos now. They're the ones who are threatening the kids that if they don't go along with this stuff, that there's something wrong with them or they're going to get expelled. I've heard so many recordings of teachers telling the kids, you are going to go through and you are going to watch this. Where's the feminine energy in that? There's nothing feminine about it, right? So I do think the feminism is behind a lot of this gender confusion. And I think a lot of these people have very low self-worth. And it's easy to fall into low self-worth. And I know I talk about this one a lot, but I release something with people, not everybody, but expressions of negative ego blocks. And you and I went through this. You were great, except for you were defensive, but that wasn't you who made you defensive. You're dealing with somebody who had was really trying to put the boots to you, right? So that made you defensive, but it was in your energy field. But my point is a lot of these negative ego expressions usually is because people hate themselves. So how did we become such a society where we should be flourishing? And there's so many people who they feel they're not worthy. They don't feel they're deserving. They feel worthless. How did this happen? These are the things that we're supposed to be teaching in my mind's eye, right?
Well, I think it goes back to a show that a couple times ago where you brought up the Gloria Steinem and the plan, that there was an actual plan and effort to insert a different ideology into womanhood.
Yes.
And so how did this happen? How did any of this happen? And where are these rules made? What 3 letters can I think of that have the power to infiltrate? And we've talked about mind washing, who have the power to spread a single message through multiple vehicles, in particular mainstream media. And we've all, well, maybe listeners go look up the repeat, every single channel saying the same thing, the same story, geared the same way. And you talk about education, the funding for universities coming from particular entities that therefore have trickle down power over what's being taught, what's in textbooks. I saw another story recently that however many years ago, certain person donated and to these universities, but then with that grant, that donation, that money coming in every year, that had power over the publishing company and what's in the textbooks.
No free lunch.
And this is so. When I went to college, or high school or wherever, we believed that the teacher was telling us the truth, was telling us something important, that's why we're there to learn. And they would say, you're here to learn. And so that's that authority figure that we've been, told, hey, this person's right. Our parents, they weren't in school with us. They would say, listen to your teacher. Right. You would get punished if your teacher said they're not cooperative or they're not, following the rules. So those, whatever they're teaching, those same trickle down still happens. And that's what's been going on for several years now, probably at least 50, 70 years. It's changed the landscape of American culture. And we are seeing the fruition of all that education that was imposed to divide and conquer and create chaos between the citizens, the people, so that somebody else can control. If you're united, you can't be controlled. If you have thinking and rational thinking, and you're like, this makes no sense. If enough people will admit that this makes no sense, they stop and think and discern, like we've talked about, then they will be freed. People talk about slavery. We have been trained into a mindset, a slavery mindset, that somebody else has all the answers and we better listen to them. And then if you don't, you are threatened with your job loss. You're threatened with people saying, oh, you're a bigot, you're a racist, with no real evidence and reason to believe that, other than these are these labels they come up with. Even if you say something that had nothing to do with any of the accusations, that people are brainwashed. And that this is why you ask why what's going on here. And when you talk about women hating themselves, yes, you had to take the individual down. Like,
Totally.
you're no good unless you're like a man. Now, oh man, you're no good unless you're like a woman. And talk about the like there's a word for it, but the disconnect between your mind, body, and your spirit.
Yes.
When you're being told something and you're being attacked from the outside and the inside, and there's a situation where, like, sometimes it's just easier to go, oh, you're right, I'm in the wrong body. Oh, my friends said, my friends will like me better if I'm like this, even though I'm not like that.
So they've taught these students to disassociate with what it means to be human, the human self, the human energy, the essence of femininity, the essence of masculinity. They've taught everybody to be disconnected, even so disconnected inside that they don't know when somebody's telling them something that's absolute rubbish, right?
Yeah.
It's impossible. But it's what you're saying, that there's so many of them repeating. And now it's to the point that women are feeling victimized, because people are standing up because the men are starting to infiltrate the feminine role. But where are the women to claim the feminine role? In the example, with everything that's going on, I don't hear very many women speaking up and saying, you leave those children alone. It's the men who are starting to speak up and say that. And I'm not saying it's not the case everywhere. I'm not saying that, but mostly, and I'm hearing a lot of survivors speaking up. So that's different. I find there's more female survivors speaking up, but the people who work in these industries, the average person on the street, women aren't speaking up for the children. They're not saying, hey, wait a minute, that's not right. Yeah. Do I believe that all these children are our responsibility? Yes, but they belong to the parents. And then if the parents can't prove, when I say parents can't prove, the parents have to, they do have to prove to a certain level that they understand what emotional intelligence is, how to esteem themselves appropriately, how to have them feel connected within the family dynamic, and not just meet the physical needs. I was listening to this survivor talk. She was, I think she was in Detroit, she said, and she was a product, she ended up running away, and she got into human trap. They started trafficking her. And I don't know how long it was that she was in it, but she was talking about, she thought because her father was absent, that's why she was looking for that father role. So it was an interesting interview, and the interviewer did not, he would ask questions, but he didn't interrupt her. He let her talk. But as she's talking, she's talking about her mother and how much she disappointed her mother. And she said because her mother was a single mother, she had to work all the time. But when she came home, she either sat at the kitchen table writing things out and doing bills, or she did her crafts. Mm. And as she's talking about this, and then she said, I think at 15 or 16, there was a boy interested in her, and the mother let him sleep with her in her bed. He was older than her. Yeah. So as she's going on, she's thinking all this is normal. So this girl is so disconnected, thinking it's the father that left, but because the mother is physically in your presence doesn't mean your mother's present either.
Right. Yeah, true.
So this girl ran away, and they got her. I can't remember, through police, can't remember the whole story, but they brought her back home, and then she ran away again. But what was she looking for? So she's thinking she's looking for her father, like the father wound. But I think she was just looking to be loved, because she put everything on herself and blamed herself. And as she's describing what's going on with her mother and how much she disappointed her mother, and her mother was embarrassed because she was doing all this, I'm like, that's a narcissistic mother. All she cares about is herself. Yeah, so we're thinking, right? So we're missing the emotional component of what it means to raise children, raise a family. So she kept saying, well, they put a roof over my head. I had a nice house. We had a nice dog. And I'm sitting here going, oh my gosh, I don't know what you would say to help these people realize that, no, that's not all it means to be a parent. That's not what you need. You need that nurturing, loving mother energy. You need to know that you matter. You need somebody to hug you, tell you how important you are, that they love you. I worked with a woman, she was 42 before her mother told her she loved her.
That's sad. So, well, and yeah. sometimes I've had similar clients where, you know, the teaching, the mother or the father who never would say, I love you, or in their mind, they were teaching that person to be tough. You know, yeah,
So
it's,
where did they learn that? Do you know?
yeah,
And it's exactly right. So it's the old school. So I like how you went back 70 years because it was the old school. Let the child cry themselves to sleep at night. And realizing now that was just torture.
yeah, it was awful. It was torture for me too, reading that book and no, let them cry. And I'm like, no, I don't like this. I can't take it. You
So
know, yeah, that nurturing part, you know, the book says don't pick up your baby.
right. So
Like,
we know there's psychopaths who are even trying back then to create a generation and a society of disconnected people. But the idea is that you trust yourself. But we have almost been shamed out of admitting that we're loving and kind or what have you. And there's a group of people, whoever they are, that confuse kindness and decency with weakness. And they think because you're kind or you're decent or whatever that you're weak and you deserve to
mhm,
be whatever. I can destroy you because you're weak.
yeah,
So there's so many things that we need to look at. But again, going back to respecting nature, that's what a lot of this is what we started talking about, right? And division, bringing the division that we're experiencing now into unity. So we're seeing a lot of people speaking up. We also know that the game between good and evil, there's a lot of deception out here. So there's people pretending to be good who are not going to be. There's people who are pretending to be bad who are going to turn out to be good. So we still are watching everything unfold. There's a lot of shenanigans, but it's almost like we've got moving parts. Remember those, what was that thing called? Was it like a kaleidoscope and you twist it and all kinds of
uh-huh, yeah,
designs come in? It's almost like we're in one of those bubbles, but the one that we can control is the emotional side of this, of how we see what is in front of us. And again, that's that women are the victims because now the men are hurting us again. Get the fuck over yourself, because you got to take responsibility for the fact that they're conning you because you don't want to be you. And this is where, and I know some women are going to say, I get it totally, Sandy. And they are walking their talk. I do get that. But I'm talking about the ones who are just always being a victim by what's going on out there, that the men are always hurting me because they will never be right. And if you have a relationship where one person's right all the time and one person's always wrong, you have an imbalance of power. And maybe that's why they're going to pornography, because men and women don't know what a loving relationship is. It's interesting. I actually saved this clip and I meant to have it available for today, but I forgot. It's a woman on a subway. So how ugly this is getting now. They put signs above the subway where they put the advertising of all the pansexual. They've got an adult sticking his tongue in a little kid's mouth, like all, what do you call it, animated. And this
oh,
woman went up and started pulling this down. And she's saying, can't you see they're indoctrinating you? Because they want
yeah,
to bring that
normalizing it, yeah,
adult on child in. And Kathy O'Brien recently was in an interview with Risk Flex, and she was saying they have to get you before you're 5 years old, because that's the absolute worst thing you can do to a child. That's the most traumatic experience before age 5. I can imagine it's even bad after that. But if you can get to them before age 5, you can control their mind.
yeah,
And so I do like Kathy O'Brien. Like she's also like, she's one saying we got to stand up, we got to figure this out, we have to understand this, we have to start demanding changes are made, you know. But my point is, where's the women standing up? Where's the women who are
yeah,
focused on somebody other than themselves and being selfless? Don't get me wrong, we still have to look after ourselves. I'm not saying give it all up. I don't believe in that. Most people I work with are more than 50% service to others. If anything, I'm trying to get them to be service to self, because they give more in 20% than most people do in 50. Like they're just very generous people, right? But we have to be able to stand up and recognize that there's a division here, respect nature, get back to what I'm not going to say is this is the new normal, because that'll just get misconstrued with the slogans that are already out there. But we have to start realizing that there's nothing natural
no,
about this, but women have to stand up and take a stand for women and as women. I'm not saying tell anybody what to do.
I'm not going anywhere, but I got to turn off my camera for a moment because I have an intruder on my wall.
Okay. I can only imagine what that is. I'm sure it has like 8 legs.
Yeah, that's right. He has 8 legs.
There you go. So I hope people are finding this inspiring. But
Oh,
so if the men are becoming women, why are women not loving enough? Are women not intimate enough? Are women not sharing enough? What is
well,
happening there that so many people are turning to the pornography?
I think there, to me, there's still, you know, when you say women are like, oh, poor me, I still do, however, believe that there are, you know, if we go back to women's sports, as been pointed out, that men, if it's a sport where they're superior strength and you know, that sort of thing cannot be competed with, then I don't think they belong. Just like they have lightweight events for men and men, right? Light and medium weight events for men and women, heavyweight events for men and men. You know, the the lightweight guy cannot compete against, you know, would never win in the, you know, heavyweight competition, right? So even within men, they have that. That should be respected in women's sports, to not incorporate a man that can obviously outperform a woman because of the physical differences. And it doesn't have anything to do with whether he's got that part or not, you know, other than if it's a woman, it's a woman. And so some women are stronger than other women. And if it's, and so if they wanted to say, adjust it for, you know, test your, you know, if you're both heavyweight and you want to infiltrate that way. Or I still think even better that, you know, just choose another category and have it be,
I don't
you
believe
know,
men should be in women's sports, period. But what I'm saying is women don't have a problem. They're the ones who opened the door by having girls in on boys' teams. Women opened that door by demanding,
yeah.
I want this, but now the men are doing it and the women are going, wait a minute. You don't get it both ways.
It's
So that's,
different though. They didn't go in saying I'm a man. You see the little subtle
it's still
difference.
not
They
okay.
didn't
So
say, I'm a man and you need to let me on your team. They said, I'm a woman and I want to compete. Okay.
because they have to be able to dupe the females. So it's not, to me, it doesn't matter. If the women want to have it, then the men have it. And when I look at that, I don't think they should be on either team. I don't think the females should be on the male teams. Oh, because you're what, so good? Who cares? Doesn't matter. I don't follow sports. It's just an opinion. It doesn't mean that that's going to hold water on any conversation with that. But what I'm saying is the women want it their way.
I
Women,
think though, I'll go back to this though. I like there's men's swimming and there's women's swimming. Okay. So they both have an opportunity to compete as swimmers. So maybe with the women that wanted to be on men's teams, there wasn't a woman's team for them to play that sport. So I think that's kind of how that started. That, you know, football, there wasn't a women's football team. I think now there are, right? So
so why do women want to play football? And that's another, when you start looking at some of those sports, so I'm not,
yeah,
you know, going into that side of it.
that does get back to that feminine, masculine energy kind of thing. Um, but
So,
that same argument could go like, why does a woman want to be an engineer? Most engineers are men. So I
so that's
personally
a
like,
different category, because one, your building is not going to be built less structurally sound because a woman created the design. With the fire department or the police services, you want the man because you want somebody who's physically able to carry you out. So I'm
and I'm sure
talking
they have
about
tests, but
teams.
I think they've watered down the tests for
Oh,
a lot of,
totally. Yeah.
yeah.
So it's even like lawyers, women can be as strong in that field as men. I don't have any doubt. Businesses, I don't have any doubt about that. But what I'm saying is some of the areas where the sex of the individual does make a difference
Mhm.
is what I'm talking about in that regard, right? That you want the physical stronger people to do physically jobs that are more demanding, physically demanding. So when it comes to the sports, I'm just going to throw it out here as an example. So we thought women wanted that because women were taught that they want to make money like a man, they want to do male activities, everything. So again, going back to that feminism movement, this is
Yeah.
part of the problem, that women didn't want to be women. They wanted to be men. They wanted to compete. They want what the men have. But now the men want what the women have, and we're going, what? And I agree. What? You
And
can't
that,
have
like
that
that
because
little
that's
girl
our
with
role.
that little girl with the question about the kill rate, you know, virginity used to be a value.
Yeah.
And I don't know if the guy asking her that was like hoping she had a high kill rate or was hoping that, you
Oh,
know,
he
maybe,
wanted a low. That's what I said to her. I go, he wants a low kill rate. I go, he doesn't. I go, who wants to be in a car that 20 men have driven, 20 people have driven? You want to be the first. You want to be in a new car, right? Or You know what I mean? And I'm not saying it's as cut and dry as that, but she couldn't get that through her head because the educators, again, are indoctrinating them to think that, oh, the boys are just afraid of you.
And that's another thing about nature. You know, really, if we go biology and just the way nature created our, there was the hunter gatherer and then there was the nurturer. I mean, that's if we go way back and what our bodies and our hormones and our nature gave us. Yes, certainly you can branch out, you can incorporate both parts of you, but in general, women are the nurturers. They're the ones who are home taking care of the children and the cave or whatever, and the men are hunter gatherers. And that hunter gatherer thing also for nature had men more sexually active, and that's part of nature that they can get more women pregnant, right? A woman can only have one baby every 9 months to a year, I mean. So but a man, he could propagate the species, so that's just part of nature. I'm not saying
But that's not the human condition of consciousness.
I'm not saying socially it's the way it
Yeah.
should be, but I'm saying biologically that's how our bodies were built. So even maybe in that reptilian brain, in that core brain of ours that is purely nature, that it is more acceptable, it's just more expected that men have more partners than women. That's that going back to biology.
So, but who says, okay, so when we look at biology, are you comparing yourself to, like, let's say the two elk that the males are fighting to see who gets to impregnate the herd? Are you saying humans have the same psyche as the four-leggeds? Because I don't believe that for a minute. I think we
No, I'm
have,
talking like humans, like Neanderthal,
yeah,
or
but I'm
that
saying we have so much
yeah,
more than
yes, we do.
using our sexuality, but humans don't know how to use our sexuality for creation. And this is part of the problem. And that was the reason for courtship, is my understanding back then, because the woman had to decide if the man could stick around for 20 years. But what I'm saying is, if these women are so masculine now, are they driving some of these men out? Because then what's happening, the children that are not protected in the homes because we're all single parent homes. So I'm questioning all of that, right? So I'm questioning, that's what I think the role of courtship is about, because anybody can mate, but we're, as humans, we're supposed to be above that, that it's more
Right.
than just you're in heat, so go
That's
at it.
right.
So
Exactly.
one comment, I wrote this one in my book too when we were talking. So female sports, go for it, knock yourself out. I don't think the men should be there for whatever reason. My opinion only. People have to decide for themselves. But it's the same, because when women can revert to the masculine energy, I understand that we want to get something done. We're building a fence or we're teaching a class or something. We're probably in our masculine because we're trying to stay on schedule. We've really got a structured situation going. So can you imagine a mother playing on a hockey team, and she's gone and they're down to the third period and they've got 10 minutes left to go in the game, and her mind is all in the game, winning the game, and somebody comes up and brings her a newborn and says breastfeed? She'd be like, what? She couldn't, like, she'd be like, I'm not in that energy, because she's in her
Yeah.
masculine. So we do understand that we can go and revert between the two, but women are so in their masculine now that they're forgetting what it means to be women, because we're not standing up and saying, wait a minute, no, I'm not a chest feeder. You don't get to define who I am.
You know, it's interesting as you say that, standing up and speaking up and saying no is the masculine energy
Totally.
side, instead of the okay, really feminine energy side is more fluid, kind of the soft approach.
Yes.
So that's kind of interesting, is that women need to, and this really goes to, like, therapeutically, there's parts therapy, that we all have our parts. Something I've been working on is archetypes. We are all of the archetypes, and we depending on what role we're in, like the hockey player,
Right.
then we are like, that's my hockey player self. When we're home with the kids, that's my mom self. Well, so we have different parts and we express those. So that whole integration thing, but the women need to have their inner masculine stand up for their inner feminine. And that's part of that integration that I was talking about in the beginning. Integrate. It's okay to have that unity within yourself of saying,
Totally.
hey, woman part, do you like this? And you're like, I don't really like it. Can we do something about that? Would you help me out, darling? And of course I'm going to stand up for you, because that's my
Right.
job. Yeah. And so pull out the masculine, protector to
You know,
say, I'm not going to let you do this to my feminine part anymore.
right. And so that's a great analogy. And I do agree with that. And we need to do it on the personal level, but we also need to do it on the macro level. And
Yeah.
we're seeing the men are standing up. And I think this is great that they're standing up. But you know what's funny? They want rallies and they want to get that going in different countries. And then I'm not putting any of this down. But then what, when we don't have a roadmap that we have to turn to that explains what it means to be healthy as an individual, coming from your higher self with a balance of masculine and feminine energy. And this is one of the aids I use, high and shadow sides, traits within masculine and feminine energy. And I'm just going to read a few of the female traits. Is it okay to be warm, loving, collaborative, soft, caring, relational, emotional, surrendering, creative, receptive, sensitive, dependent, negative polarity, intuitive? I had to put polarity in there because women got upset when I said we're negative. And I'm like, that's not what it means. The masculine is a positive polarity. We're the negative polarity. So I was told to put that word in.
Or receiving, yeah. Yes.
We're receiving, but they took it negative. So
Yeah.
we're almost
Like
hardwired just to
instead
be,
of electricity. Yeah.
yeah, right. So it's almost like we're hardwired to be offended by everything instead of
Sure.
saying, what does that mean? Right. Playful, delightful, cooperative, beautiful, graceful, trusting, vulnerable, heart-centered, expressive, empathic, conceptual, holistic, resting, receiving, and being. And when you look at those as feminine traits, we all, even the men have that. And when I work with men, I say to them, if you're playing ball with your child, that's being playful. Like you're playing with them, and it can also be teaching them a skill. So when you're playful, that's in your feminine energy, but you don't have to go and put a tutu on to do it.
Yeah. Or make your son wear a tutu either.
Right. So the men aren't the ones doing this. This is mostly the women doing this, is what the librarians, the teachers, this is the women doing this. So they've lost the essence of who they are in a lot of ways, that they're just doing whatever they're told to do. Right. So for the men, integrity, leadership, powerful, trustworthy, for the masculine, not the men. So we have these qualities, we have these abilities too as women. Yeah. Integrity, leadership, powerful, trustworthy, goal-oriented, action, disciplined, responsible, respectful, honorable, stoic, strong, protective, analytical, rational, positive polarity, active, regal, inspiring, objective, ambitious, improving, heroic, independent, intelligent, giving, chivalrous, linear, compartmentalized, and doing. So they're the action, we're the being. There's nothing wrong with either one of us. I'm not putting anything down, but there's a time when we know which one we go into, but the idea is that we are supposed to be the best we can be. And right now, again, women wanted certain things, but now the men want things from us, and it's like, what a mess. Right?
Yeah. It has become a mess. And like I said, I think there's been years and years of education
Yes.
to create that inner and outer chaos within individuals, confusion, and then, like you say, the macro and the micro. So the micro, inner confusion about, who am I? What am I? This, am I that? And you know what? You are all of it. And how am I going to choose to express myself? And what's my nature? What's my nature? You don't have to cut parts off to express yourself in whatever nature you feel. Yeah, it's just like it's just too much, right?
So this is interesting because I look at this with maybe from a different perspective. I look at it that when did how we express ourselves as a gender become who we are as human beings? And we're the only species that get confused that all of a sudden, where's our priorities? And that was one of the questions I was going to ask. Where's our priorities? Our priorities are to be the best we can be, create a good life for ourselves, find a loving relationship, create a family, help build things, help create. It doesn't matter if we're creating an empire. Look at the sun comes out when I get going sometimes.
I noticed it going back.
Yeah, an empire. We're creating a lovely family. We're creating a company that sells food that gives back. So we've lost sight of what our priorities are when we're all focused on this stuff. And I think that's where part of the education system doesn't want us focusing on what are we here to do? What are we on planet Earth to do? What did you come this time to build or create or experience? Because our sexuality is our personality evolves around our sexual drive. That was Therese Benedict wrote that in 1959, I think. But and what's the purpose of this? This is another book I've got. Why are we born male and female? To procreate, because you need one and the other to keep your species going. And we're a dying species because we're so confused on this low level energy, like it's like the sacral chakra, the sex energy. We're stuck in the bottom 2 chakras. We're not even at the 3rd chakra right now, which is your willpower. We're not even there. We're at the lowest expression of human.
Yeah, way down here, stuck in our genitals, you know?
Right. So basically that's what they've got. And that
genitals are instead of what your spirit is.
Totally,
And
exactly.
to that, you know, when you talk about what we're focused on and that confusion, again, you know, excuse me, I'm going to get my tinfoil hat here because it seems to fit well in some instances that there's a large entity that believes that we have overpopulation. And then there are many that say, well, no, that's not true, you know, that we're okay. But there are several ways that you can control and eliminate population. And we know what some of them are. Another way is to encourage them not breeding, to encourage groupings that don't have children. And so it's just that that's a small part, but you know, it's you put everything into the mix to encourage a lack of making children. So illness, infertility, and I don't know if you can hear my personal assistant Alexa over there telling me what I'm supposed to be doing in an hour. But she tells me several times. She tells me, Alexa, stop. She tells me several times over. She must think I'm stupid, but that's her opinion. Anyway, so yeah, I think that's part of possibly. So
let's talk about the population. We don't know, statistically speaking, we don't know that they're telling us the proper stats. And if you have a problem, you think the Earth is overpopulated, they've got MAID in Canada, medically assisted dying. Supposedly there's 37,000 people have taken that option to date in Canada. Oh, because you think because they're no longer productive in society, that they've cultivated in such a way that is your lowest denomination of who you are as a human being. Somebody gets to decide this for you. You think it's time to the planet's overpopulated? Knock yourself out. You go take yourself out. But the problem is now everybody's trying to describe for others what they should be doing. And I do not subscribe to any of what I hear in the mainstream philosophies. So I don't look at that and say, some people might think that. Well, some people might think I'm polka dot. It doesn't mean it's true. You know, like I just, because they say it doesn't mean you feed it. Like for me, I don't feed it any energy, because one thing I've learned about statistics, it's all bullshit. And I think I was telling you earlier, when my friend and I were sitting outside, this guy drives by on a bike. And he drives by a second time and he comes by a third time. And I'm like, really? But they listen on the phone and they knew. So these are non-character players. And this has happened a couple times in the neighborhood, talking to another neighbor down the, she was down the street and I was talking to her and she goes, this guy, she was, I can't believe that. And I go, what? And she goes, that guy. And I said, what? And she goes, he was sitting here for 5 minutes fiddling with his bike, but there's nothing wrong with it. And he just drove away. They wanted to hear what we're talking about. So we're told mining, minerals, and oil and gas is the biggest driver of the economy. Bullshit. Surveillances. You know, so I don't believe a lot of these statistics. We got too many people. So you're going to feed us bugs now, and you get to decide what life you get, and you get to decide what life we get. We're not giving our power away to these people, period. I don't care what their philosophies are. Yeah, we understand that they're really messing with the fertility. Look at how many people walk around with their cell phones in their back pocket. That fries the ovaries and the testes.
All of it, yeah.
So people have to make their own decisions. They have to decide what they want their life to look like, what they're going to aspire to. But the other people have to stop trying to dictate the narrative and control it. And like I said, with these women right now going, oh, look at these men doing this to us. You had no problem doing it to them. And if we're going to have an equal balance between the masculine and the feminine, we can't have a double standard. And I know there's no standard like a double standard, but women want it both ways. And we can't do that anymore. We have to aspire to our highest self, get back in touch what it means to be women, be able to articulate to the younger generations how important it is to enjoy being a woman, and it'll have fun, of course. But this is what I see is we're missing that. We need to get back to that, but we're just basically going off whatever narrative they say. Oh, men can go into women's sports. Oh, really? We're overpopulated. Oh, really?
Yeah.
You know, like,
because they said so. Remember, we're going back to that authority that, they said so, it must be true.
yes.
And then stopping, it's like, I joked about a tinfoil hat, but I think some people seem to be walking around with a lead cap on, and it doesn't let in common sense.
Yes.
common sense. And like, why does that, why is this true? Is it true? So I think that there ought to be a, whenever, and even somebody's listening to us, okay, don't just off the immediate thing, whatever it is, whatever it is, don't just say, oh, that's a lie because it's coming from here. Stop,
Right.
check it out, and then go inside. Your gut knows the answer.
Yes.
A lot of times, and I think people are, like you said, not connected with their own nature, and when something is true, right?
Yes, totally. Maybe we should do a show on dosing. We talked about doing some other topics. That is a good one because that's the reading of the energy, right? That's what sensing the energy is, and being able to sense yourself, what's right or wrong, instead of just listening to all these narratives, because they do not have your highest good in mind.
Then you're like, oh, I don't know, and yeah, I love that idea. And it's easy to teach. It's easy to teach
It's
somebody.
so easy to teach, right?
With your body, you don't
Yeah.
even need tools. You just,
And some
so
people like the tools because of the visual, but that's we can talk about that maybe for another time. But definitely
even
hoping
in
to
the
improve your intuition. But so that's what we want to talk about is respecting nature. Mother Nature made this perfect, and some people will be upset because I didn't use the G word. And it doesn't matter if you call it God, Source, Allah. It doesn't matter what you call it, right? If you call it consciousness, it's all the same energy, Mother Nature. But we are perfect by design. But somebody's trying to mess all this up and reverse us, which is nobody's going to be happy then. And that's what I think we really need to stand up with our. So they're telling people to stand down, stand down, stand down. We're saying stand up, stand up, stand up. Maybe we can meet in the middle somewhere. That until common sense gets back into being the common good and the common knowledge starts to be the focus again. But anyways, that's kind of what I was kind of thinking about all this. But respecting nature, that's a great topic today. And appreciate that and all you've had to add to it, and even coming up with the title. That is wonderful. Do you have anything else you want to share, or how are you?
Yeah, I think just, reminding whoever's listening to this, and if they have a way of sharing this with, somebody, not necessarily share them this, but those people that would not want to listen to this, to open a discussion about how it feels to be a woman when you're a woman, and like what parts of being a woman do you really enjoy, and isn't that nice if you're a woman to
Right.
express, and to say, yeah, you know what, it's okay to be this woman.
Yes.
And men, it's okay to be a man. And actually, the more that you respect your nature, the better you're going to feel about yourself.
Totally,
Because
more
then
confident.
you're not fighting that internal dilemma of, who am I? What am I? You're all of it. And
Yes.
Respect nature. So
Yes, totally. We're the only species who seems to get it wrong, but we also can think into the future, and that's either can be a good thing or a bad thing. So hope everybody enjoyed this today. And if you like, please hit the like and the subscribe button and share it with people, because we are going to come out of this with our common sense intact. And there's so many good things happening right now. People are waking up and they are starting to ask the questions, and ask yourself the question, what are you here for? What's your purpose? Because if it's just a matter of how you express yourself, you're shooting low. Aim for the best you can be. So anyways, Desiree's information will be in the description box along with mine. If you have any questions for us, we'd love to hear from you. Take good care, everybody. Have a good one.